We just wrapped up a wonderful session here at the World Trade Promotion Organization conference on strengthening food ecosystems. And we have here with us two speakers. Our first speaker is Marike de Pena, who is with CLAC on fair trade. And we just wanted to find out a recap of what the session was. You were really talking about something that sounds counterintuitive. Group people together to help them compete. Can you describe what you were saying?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think it's not. It's not counterproductive. It's a need to really compete in global markets. Small farmers on their own cannot compete and cannot enter in global markets without being part of a bigger organizations they own. And that is cooperatives, associations, social enterprises that exist to negotiate better prices in global markets, together have more volume to be able to negotiate better prices, but also to organize services small farmers need to compete in this market and get technical assistance, access to technology, access to finance, access to information, because small farmers still have quite poor access to information, and just in an organized way, small farmers are able to compete in a market as on the same level or similar level than bigger players.
So how does that practically work? Because who's going to organize them? What kind of things need to be done by policymakers and other big businesses who are buying from these farmers?
Well, in Latin America, where I'm coming from, we have a culture of organization. So many organizations organize themselves because they felt the need. They sit together and form the cooperative and the association with the objectives to build decent living. This is why I said the objectives of a cooperative of smallholders are quite similar than the objectives of the SDGs. Growing out of poverty, no hunger, decent work and decent living condition, combat climate change, gender and youth inclusion. So our objectives on smallholder cooperative level are the same objectives than the Sustainable Development Goals. And we really believe that the only way we can achieve this objective is through sustainable trade and sustainable production.
And that is about decent wages, also to get the young people involved who don't really think agriculture is cool.
Well, maybe they think it's cool, but it's not sustainable. And I think sustainability is a condition for future agriculture. If not, we will lose the generation we need to step in. So we need to work the youth, we need to motivate the youth, we need to train the youth, but we also need to facilitate the entrance for youth. Amongst others, there are very good examples like in Colombia, where the government have put in place a pension scheme for farmers. So farmers are not farmers until they die. That's a reality of many of our countries. Farmers can step out and youth can step in earlier. So that is one of the many measures governments can take together with cooperatives and together with the markets. But it's very important that we change the market to change trade, to change lives.
That's perfect. Ending on this note, to change those things at the foundational level, farmers need to be involved in the discussions, right?
It's very important to understand from the farmer's perspective the needs they have, and even more if we want to build effective ecosystems. Ecosystems need to be effective for farmers, but need to be built with farmers, because only farmers themselves can identify the different challenges they have in competition, in getting the youth inside, in gender empowerment. So all these challenges are different in different products, in different regions, in different countries, but only the farmers themselves can build, together with all the support actors, effective ecosystems.
That's a wonderful conclusion, and it actually leads perfectly into our next guest. Thanks so much for joining us, Marike. We're going to welcome now Kaspar Baumann, who is with Clarmondial, who is also on the panel, and he's really bringing the investment angle, because we can have all the best ideas, but if we don't have the money or the support behind it, it's not going to work. And you were talking about storytelling, right? The farmers or the producers need to know how to tell their story, and the investors need to listen to that. Can you talk about what you had mentioned?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing in the financial sector is that non-financial metrics become more and more important, at least to a part of the investors out there, who are not only seeking financial returns with their investments, but also to achieve a positive impact. And to reach those groups and to involve them in those sustainable supply chains, we need to be able to deliver them that non-financial data. In other words, we need to be able to tell them a story of what their money is achieving.
And to convince investors, there has to be new metrics then, right? How does that actually happen? If you want to say, I want to measure sustainability and pay me for this or invest in my business, how does that actually work with someone like you who looks at the bottom line?
Yes, I mean, if there need to be new metrics or not, that's another question. I think the importance is that we understand what a specific investor is interested in achieving, and those groups, they might be development banks, foundations, family offices, or banks. They might have different goals that they want to achieve in non-financial terms. So we need to see how can we translate that into a metric that we can track and then report on to see the impact that their project has achieved. In practice, how that works, and I think this is really where Alliances for Action feeds in, is that we need to engage with all the stakeholders in the value chain. So be it the smallholder producers, the aggregators, the larger processors, to understand how they operate and where we can basically get those metrics from.
So for the smallholder farmers, there were some questions that you had mentioned in the panel, like who are the key players, what are the incentives? Can you describe what those questions are that they need to have answers for, I guess, when they have these discussions with investors?
Sure, and understanding the incentives is a critical point. I think you really need to look at the individual project. So what we discussed was, for example, farm rejuvenation, which is a longer-term project in most cases. And you might want to see, okay, what is the number of farmers that have been trained in improved practices, that have been given better seedlings? How are those seedlings developed? So those could be elements that you're tracking. And then as you go down the value chain, basically those metrics might change. In terms of an aggregator, you might want to see, okay, how many farmers are they sourcing from? What is the volume of trade that is happening based on sustainable production, et cetera, et cetera.
Great. And before we let you go, any concrete tips for producers or even associations that want to approach investors and say, can you invest in me? Any tips?
I think what's really critical is that you make an effort at understanding the ecosystem of the investor universe. So you might be well familiar with the ecosystem that you're operating in locally in terms of the production system, but it's important to go out there and do some research about who are the groups that could be financing your project, that could be investing in your company, and what are their restrictions, what are their priorities, what are their modus operandi. That helps you to really filter out those groups that might be most promising to work with and have an efficient process in that way.
Excellent. So have the conversations, do your homework, know who you're talking to.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much, Kaspar. Such a pleasure. And thank you for your time. And we look forward to other discussions happening the next 2 days. And thank you. And for all of you joining us at home, please be sure to keep posted because we have 2 full days of events covering all things in business ecosystems. So we'll see you there.